Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. Historical Men in Crisis. One of my viewers wanted me to do another installment in the Historical Men in Crisis series. And for this installment in the Historical Men in Crisis series, I'm going to be talking about Hungerford Massacre shooter Michael Ryan and mass shooter Marc Le Pen. Now, the first historical man in crisis I'm going to be talking about is Michael Ryan. Now, Michael Ryan is known in the United Kingdom as the shooter in the Hungerford Massacre that led to the deaths of 16 people and led to Michael Ryan taking his own life after participating in the Hungerford Massacre. And Michael Ryan is a guy who basically was on the road to becoming a man in crisis due to the dysfunctional way he was raised by his parents, which included a very domineering mother and a beta male father, and both of those parents basically coddled and spoiled Michael Ryan, preventing him from becoming the kind of man who could go out here and take care of himself due to the dysfunctional way they raised him. Now, Michael Ryan was the only son of two parents, and the only son of two parents, he was basically sheltered and spoiled, and because he was sheltered and spoiled, he basically wound up growing up in what I call a rose-colored reality. Now, in that rose-colored reality, for Michael Ryan, everything was completely distorted, and as everything was distorted, he could not see the real world, and because he couldn't see the real world, he really didn't know how to function in life, and because he didn't know how to function in life, he was a boy who was on the road to becoming an extremely dysfunctional man in crisis, and this mama's boy basically didn't know how to be a man because his parents just didn't cut the apron strings and set healthy boundaries for him. Now, because those parents didn't set healthy boundaries for Michael Ryan, he basically wound up growing up in a codependent relationship with his parents, where his parents had all of the power in the relationship, and he never learned a male life skill as related to having boundaries, and he didn't learn how to have autonomy over himself. And because he never learned how to have autonomy over himself, he never learned how to take responsibility for himself. Now, when it comes to a boy, and the most important male life skills that he needs to have are two things. One, he needs to learn how to have boundaries, because boundaries allow him to see where the line is. But when you have parents who overprotect the child, they never learn where the line is. And because they never learn where the line is, many of those boys never learn where to stop when it comes to things. And that basically made it where Michael Ryan had a hard time being able to establish boundaries for himself. And this led to him becoming sullen and bullied in school. And he wound up becoming sullied and bullied in school because of his parents overprotecting him and not making it where he had to learn how to do things on his own, because a boy has to learn autonomy for himself, because having autonomy for yourself, you need to be able to have boundaries taught to you so that you can set boundaries for yourself. And this started the foundation for Michael Ryan further down the road to becoming a man in crisis, because as he wasn't learning about boundaries, he was living in this rose-colored reality, and in that rose-colored reality, he was feeling powerless about himself, and because he felt powerless about himself, he began to have a fascination with guns and weapons, and had this fascination with guns and weapons because he didn't feel like he could have power as a man, because his parents had all of the power in their relationship, and as they had all of the power in the relationship, he felt the only way he could have power as a man was in the secret world. Now, in my book, The Man Crisis, I talk about this secret world that beta males live in, and in the secret world, these beta males feel safe about expressing their natural masculinity, their natural manhood, and their, even in some cases, their natural sexuality. And because these men feel ashamed of expressing their own natural masculinity and natural sexuality, what they do is enter this place I call the secret world in order to feel safe about being a man. But sadly, they wind up, because of the rose-colored reality, having a distorted picture of what it means to be a man, because they don't know how to deal with real life in the world, and because they have a real issue with life in the real world, they feel like they have to escape to be a man. And this was what happened to Michael Ryan, who had a fixation on the military and military style things, which was shown by him basically being inspired by films like Rambo and other types of films as related to military and violent films. This is what basically made him feel like he wanted to be. They presented images of the men he wanted to be, and as those films presented him images of the man he wanted to be, he felt the only way for him to be a man was in the secret world. And sadly, this was all enabled by both of his parents, who went out of their way to give him whatever he wanted and gave him things like firearms. And as he had these firearms, what he did was go out here and participate in antisocial behavior. And the antisocial behaviors he participated in started with the killing of rabbits and small animals. And that's a red flag for anyone out here as related to beta males, because when you're dealing with a beta male who has gained access to firearms, what they do is participate in taking the lives of small animals because they have power as related to those weapons. Now, that power fixation for Michael Ryan continued to escalate, and as it escalated, he continued to live in this rose-colored reality. And in that rose-colored reality, he started going out here and creating fantasies regarding his own life, and created these fantasies, I believe, primarily because he wasn't really able to achieve any sort of success in the real world. So he wound up telling all kinds of stories about things he wanted to do, but didn't have the courage to do it because he had a real problem with going out here and dealing with conflict due to the dysfunctional way he was raised and sheltered, coddled, and spoiled. And because he was coddled, sheltered, and spoiled, Michael Ryan really didn't go out and live his life, and wound up not being able to participate in the world the way he was supposed to as a man, because his parents basically, again, sheltered and spoiled him. So he had a hard time being able to navigate life. And because he had a hard time being able to navigate life, what happened to Michael Ryan is he became simmering and boiling in anger, and simmered and boiled in anger as related to him not being able to make progress in his life, because he only basically had 2 jobs in his entire life. And as he had these 2 jobs in his life, he basically wound up quitting both of those jobs because he just could not deal with having to deal with male authority and male authority figures. And he couldn't deal with those authority figures, so he wound up going on the state like they do in the UK. And as he wound up on the state, he was winding up feeling more and more frustrated about the state of his life. And this basically got worse as he was becoming, again, more frustrated. And his father had died in 1984, so he was basically frustrated because now he was forced to be a man on his own. And as he was forced to become a man on his own, he became frustrated and took out his anger on his mother, as physically abusing her, and still continued to attack his own mother, again, because of his frustration about his state of his life. Again, he wanted to go out and do things. He wanted to go out here and accomplish things, but he didn't know how to navigate a course in life. So his whole fantasy was caught up in this whole thing as related to the military. He had bought a camouflage cat and a camouflage coat because he identified heavily with the military, and this basically is one of the possible motives for him participating in this shooting, where he felt frustrated and people were making fun of him because they knew he wasn't a real person in the military. So I believe that this possibly was one of the reasons why he wound up getting frustrated and wound up exploding in this rage. Now, as he exploded in this rage, this is where he decided to participate in the Hungerford Massacre. And as he participated in this shooting rampage on 1987, he wound up committing the murders of 16 people, including his mother, before turning the gun on himself. And he basically did this with guns he purchased legally, because over the course of his life he wound up being able to purchase all of these guns legally and then use these guns to go out here and participate in the Hungerford Massacre, where he wound up participating in the shootings of 16 people by going out and again shooting all of these people. And after killing these 16 people, he then went back to the elementary school that he grew up in, and he went to that school, I believe, primarily because this was the only place he felt safe and secure, because when it comes to a lot of these mass shooters like Michael Ryan and Elliot Rodger, they are really stuck in a state of arrested development, where they are stuck in a perpetual state of childhood. And they're stuck in that state of perpetual childhood because many of these males do not know how to be men. No, they don't know how to be men because they never had manhood modeled for them, because their beta male father could not model manhood for them. And this guy basically was so caught up in not having any models for manhood that he began to project manhood onto images like those he saw in violent movies like the Rambo movies, and owning things like magazines like Survival and Firearms and magazines like Soldier of Fortune. These are the kind of magazines he wound up purchasing because they presented the ideals of manhood, but he did not have the courage to go out and participate in the life he wanted to live. And that's basically what made him feel frustrated. He didn't want to disrupt the smooth world that he had been sheltered and coddled in by his mother and his beta male father, and he didn't have the courage to go out on his own as a man, and that's what led to him creating this massacre at the Hungerford in England, and wound up participating in this massacre, which basically started to expose real serious issues as to the UK government as related to its whole ability to handle a crisis. Their 911 system was overwhelmed as related to their 999 calls as related to this shooting. And the UK police, basically their firearms squad, because back then the UK police didn't carry firearms, they were 40 miles away. Their helicopter was in repair, and basically the whole place and the police station, they were renovating it so they had no police lines, and it basically showed all of the weaknesses in their system, and also showed a major weakness as related to what they believed to be their gun laws. And as a result of the Hungerford Massacre, in the UK they have extremely strict gun laws that restrict people from owning guns, and it's all due to this beta male. And sadly, many people don't see it wasn't the guns that were the problem. No, the problem we had with Michael Ryan was there was a boy who didn't know how to be a man, and that boy who didn't know how to be a man, due to the dysfunctional way he was raised by two dysfunctional parents, basically put this boy, who was given basically everything by his parents, because his parents not only bought him guns, they also bought him 2 cars. So he was living very well, but he just didn't know how to live the life he wanted to live. And because this boy didn't know how to live the life he wanted to live, he wound up becoming a man in crisis who created one of the greatest crises as related to to UK and world history. Now, the second historical man in crisis I'm going to be talking about is Marc Le Pen. Now, Marc Le Pen is infamously known for participating in the École Polytechnique massacre in 1989 that led to the murders of 14 women and the wounding of 10 women and 4 men. And Marc Le Pen allegedly participated in this mass murder because he wanted to fight feminism because he was upset about women being able to gain more advantages in the job market over him and women having more power than he did. And the start of this whole dysfunctional frame of mind for Marc Le Pen started out when he was very young, and that started basically due to the dysfunctional way he was raised. That led to him becoming on the road to becoming a man in crisis. Now, Marc Le Pen was not his original name. No, Marc Le Pen was originally born Camille Rodriguez Lias Gharbi, and he was the son of an Algerian immigrant, Rachid Lias Gharbi, and a Canadian nurse, Monique Le Pen. Now, Rachid, his father, was an extremely dysfunctional male who was a mutual funds salesman, and this mutual funds salesman wound up getting involved with a former Catholic nun, and as this former Catholic nun and the non-practicing Muslim came together to form a family, that family started out on the road to dysfunction as they started having children, because they had 2 children. They had Gamil and a sister, Nadia, and basically the instability of the family started Marc Le Pen on the road to becoming a man in crisis. Now, while Gamil Rodriguez Lias Gharbi was basically living with his father and his mother in these early years, this is where the father participated in abusing the mother and also was just a strict authoritarian who was extremely jealous and violent towards both his wife and his children, and had a deep hatred for women, insisting that they only serve men, and insisted that his wife basically be his personal secretary, slapping her and abusing her if any errors were made in her typing, and was also very distant from his children, and didn't really go out here and basically teach his son the proper male life skills or male survival skills, and didn't teach him how to navigate life, because this beta male basically didn't know how to make life function himself, and because he didn't know how to make life work, he became extremely frustrated and angry and took this all out on his wife and children. And as he took this out on his wife and children, in 1970, the entire marriage started to fall apart, where this father wound up slapping his son so hard that it left hand marks on his face a week later, and that's what basically motivated his mother to leave his father, and she thought she was doing what was best for the family, but sadly, because this boy started out with a foundation in dysfunction, it basically took him further down the road to becoming a man in crisis, because the father, being so angry at the mother for taking power and walking away from a toxic relationship, basically made it where this man didn't want to support his family, and as he abandoned his family, he basically wound up abandoning his family's to the point where he defaulted on the mortgage payments, I believe deliberately, and basically abandoned his family and basically left them with no home and no way to take care of themselves. And this basically led to the family not being able to come together, and eventually soon the visits with the father eventually ended, and this boy, who never saw his father after possibly 1978 or 79 or 80, basically wound up abandoning his family, and this basically put the boy on the road to becoming further dysfunctional, because he learned dysfunction from his father and felt powerless about the dysfunction he learned from his father as related to male life skills and male survival skills, and didn't really know how to function as a man, and felt again powerless because as he saw his family divorce, his father abandoned his family, and his mother returned to nursing, he felt that the woman basically destroyed his family, and because he possibly was frustrated and upset about his mother, he believed to destroy his family, I believe this was the foundation for all of his misogyny. I believe all of the foundation for all of his misogyny is because he was upset and believed that his mother basically destroyed his family, but he really didn't see how it was his father that was the one who laid the foundation because of the dysfunctional way he learned about life. He just had really dysfunctional ideas about women and having power over women because his father himself didn't really feel power as related to his own life. And this basically led to this boy growing up in a dysfunctional home. And as he wound up growing up in a dysfunctional home with his mother, he was dealing with school and being a very withdrawn person as related to the divorce and the way of state of his family, and wasn't able to fit in with other students because of his Arab name, and because he felt like he couldn't be himself as the Arab that he was born as. He legally changed his name to Marc Le Pen, partially due to his hatred of his father, and took his mother's surname, but still was growing up to become dysfunctional with a sense of low self-esteem, and had a low self-esteem that basically led to him feeling stressed about his life. And things even got worse when his sister humiliated him about his acne and lack of girlfriends. And this is where his misogyny escalated from his anger at his mother to anger at his sister. And this anger at his sister basically started him on the road to expressing hatred towards his sister. And this hatred was where he started to participate in dysfunctional behaviors that led to him entering a place I call the secret world, where he felt secure about expressing his natural masculinity and possibly his natural manhood. And there he fantasized about her death and even made a mock grave for her, and was overjoyed when his sister was placed in a group home because of her delinquent behavior and drug abuse. Basically, both of these children were on the road to becoming both men and women in crisis. And as Marc Le Pen was in this dysfunctional situation, he thought things were going to go better as related to a male role model that he had, as his mother arranged a big brother for him. But that big brother, even though he had a close relationship with him, eventually this big brother was arrested for allegedly molesting young boys, and this further put Marc Le Pen on the road to becoming a man in crisis, because after having another male figure taken away from him, he became more frustrated and angry, and started to become more frustrated and angry, and started participating in dysfunctional behavior like murdering pigeons, which is an indicator to possible more violent behavior in the future for a beta male, because going to harm animals is another thing that beta males participate in. When they feel powerless about life, they look to take power by destroying the lives of animals and taking the lives of animals, because they feel powerless about their life, and this makes them feel a sense of power. Now, another thing that he did was he was out here developing an interest in designing and building electronic gadgets, and also had an admiration of Adolf Hitler, which again was a red flag, because he was basically left alone and learned about, again, another man in crisis, which is Adolf Hitler, which shows you what happens when a beta male gets into a place of political power. And Marc wanted power that people in the military had, and he wanted that power, and that's why he applied to join the Canadian Air Forces as an officer cadet in 1981. Unfortunately, he got rejected during the interview process because the people in the military could read his body language and his behavior, and saw that he had a real serious problem submitting to male authority figures. And because he had a problem with dealing with male authority figures, people in the military saw how dysfunctional he was at 17 years old. However, the rest of the world wasn't as aware back then about beta males like they are now, because they were just coming out of the age of feminism. And as they came out of the age of feminism, they didn't understand that these males were basically socially engineered. Once you wind up with a boy who's raised in a single mother household, or a household with a beta male father, or a household with a family that's dysfunctional, these boys learn how to submit only to female authority figures, and that would make him a good fit for the military, where they saw partially, again, the antisocial behaviors from reading him as related to an interview. And that's how many people in the military can read these kind of individuals the same way I can read them as I read their stories. I can read their stories and understand how they are dangerous, because in the military you have to be able to follow chain of command, and that's what makes many beta males unfit for the military, because they cannot respect a male authority figures, they cannot acknowledge male authority, they cannot respect chain of command, and this is what makes these individuals unsuitable for military duty. And while these men ironically have a fascination with military figures because of the power that they don't understand that that power only is given to those who are trusted to follow the chain of command as related to male authority, and these males just don't know how to do this. Now, after being rejected by the military, Marc Le Pen moved to Saint Laurent to be closer to his mother and Le Pen's new Segep, and he lost contact with his friend soon after the move, which showed how he was not really not happy about his life, and began starting to go to college. And as he started to study pure sciences at this college in Saint Laurent, he wound up failing 2 courses in the semester, but still was struggling. And he was really struggling because when it comes to beta males, they have a hard time committing to things. Yes, they have a lot of passion for something. However, these men do not know how to persevere. And because they don't know how to persevere, they cannot overcome as related to adversity. And these men basically wind up having problems in places like school. Yes, they will be able to start school, but they won't be able to finish. And this was a pattern as related to Marc Le Pen's life. He wound up going to this school, Segep and D. Salon, and didn't really work things out there, but then moved out of his mother's apartment and applied to study at École Polytechnique. And as he studied at École Polytechnique, he wound up not being able to set a course to work and go to school, because he wound up getting fired from his job for his aggressive behavior and disrespect of superiors and carelessness in work. Textbook beta male behavior, because when it comes to many beta males, they have a hard time functioning in jobs for the same way they would have a problem with the military, because in the military and jobs, many of these men have a hard time dealing with male authority and male authority figures, and they have a hard time being able to follow instructions and follow orders in a position. So they don't know how to function in a job, and they don't know how to do work at a job to respect the authority of those over them, and they really don't make their work as related to standards. And this basically enraged Marc Le Pen to the point where he decided to start participating in this plan to participate in this massacre, and participated in this massacre showing his friends the textbook beta males behaviors that I talked about, like these men simmering and boiling in anger and going into a spectrum of violent behaviors, because he would fly into rages when he would get frustrated. And as he would fly into these rages, people became very uncomfortable around him because he was extremely unpredictable. And he became extremely unpredictable to the point where people were just uncomfortable around him and having him around him. Now, he was still trying to get his college degree and began a course at another school as related to participating in a computer programming course. And as he started to take this computer programming course, again, we see that Marc Le Pen just was not consistent in anything. And around 1989, he started to, again, become more frustrated. And he took a course with in chemistry at the school École, the École school. And as he took the school at the École Polytechnique, this is where Marc Le Pen's dysfunction really started to show as related to his life. Now, he wanted to have a relationship with a woman. He wanted a girlfriend, but was not comfortable around women. And he was not comfortable around women because he didn't know how to function as related to relationships. And I talk about this in depth in The Man Crisis, in the chapters about how these men have a hard time around women. They don't know how to approach women, and they don't know how to form personal connections with women. They don't know how to read body language or have and engage conversations. These men are very socially awkward, and basically with Marc Le Pen, he was basically one, before we had the term incel, he was one of these incels. He wanted a girlfriend but didn't know how to work with women, and became frustrated and started to project his anger at feminists because he felt that feminists basically wound up not being the kind of women who were allowing him to have relationships with women, because he felt that most women were feminists. He felt like he couldn't have relationships with those women, and expressed his disdain for them, especially for being in what he believed to be male jobs like the police force. He felt that women should be home caring for their families. He wanted to get a girlfriend to be someone who would fit into his smooth world and depend on him in a codependent relationship. But when he could not find that relationship as related to women, this made him become more frustrated and angry towards women. And as he became more frustrated and angry towards women, he started to try to project anger at women after he went to apply again for École Polytechnique to finish his degree. But when his application was rejected because he didn't have the required courses, this is basically what led to him basically winding up to going to try to become, I believe, frustrated as related to exploding in rage, and wanted to go out here and explode in this rage at École Polytechnique because he felt like he couldn't have the relationship he wanted with women, and felt like women were denying him to be able to live the life he wanted to live, because he possibly projected all of this onto his mother, who he felt basically took away his father, and felt like his sister was somebody who made fun of him and did not respect him. And he was filled with anger towards women. And as he was filled with anger towards women, this is what led to Marc Le Pen, I believe, looking to go to the École Polytechnique building, and with a semi-automatic rifle and a hunting knife, and went there with the intention not to try to help get himself together to fix school. No, he went there to murder people. Now, he brought this gun that he bought from a store legally to the school, and he said he was using it to hunt small game later on, but he had actually bought the gun there to participate in that mass murder, and he had been there several times just casing out the school. And as he cased out the school, this is where Marc Le Pen then decided to declare his fight on feminism, going into one classroom, separating the 50 men and 9 women in a classroom as he started his murder spree by separating the men and making them leave, and then shooting and murdering all the women, saying that they were feminists, saying he hated feminists, and wound up shooting and killing 6 of those 9 women and wounding 3 of them before writing OS on a student project. Then went to the second floor, wounded 3 students before entering another room where he attempted to shoot a female student, but then went into the staircase, reloaded his gun after it jammed, and then continued participating in this mass shooting. And as he went there, he then went into a cafeteria and wound up shooting and killing more people, and then wound up participating further in this shooting spree, and again participated in this murder spree. And as he participated in this murder spree, sadly, 14 people wound up losing his life. And after, sadly, they wound up losing their life, these people, again, were dealing with this great tragedy. And this great tragedy eventually ended when Marc Le Pen wound up shooting himself in the head and taking his own life, working towards the goal that he had back a couple of years before. Now, he did this again because he was frustrated and angry because he could not navigate a course as related to his life. And he couldn't navigate a course to his life because he basically proved the point of those people in the military who could read his dysfunctional mindset, and said that he was antisocial, and decided to participate in this mass shooting, and participated in this mass shooting because he just could not make life work, because he did not have proper male life skills, proper male survival skills, due to the dysfunctional father who basically abused him, and the whole situation with his mother having to take power, and him feeling powerless, felt that the only way he could deal with this whole situation was by destroying the lives of others, setting the pattern for a foundation for the incel as related to him and his inability to have relationships with women, setting the pattern for more of the mass shootings that we saw in the future. And while a lot of people look at the violence and want to focus on the gun issues, when I look at Marc Le Pen, he basically shows what happens when you have a beta male. A lot of the beta males are frustrated and angry because they feel like they can't be the man that they want. And since they feel like they can't be the man that they want to destroy the lives of all of those around them. And they feel upset because they feel women have taken their power as men. And because they feel like a woman has taken away their power as a man, they create a very dangerous situation. And a lot of these men, they just do not know how to function in the world. They don't understand that adversity comes to everyone, male or female, but you have to persevere. And that's the problem with a lot of these shooters. They don't understand that life is hard, life is rough, and you have to persevere in the face of adversity. Yes, you may feel a lot of pain and be frustrated about the state of life, but you don't have a right to take the life of anyone in this world. No, you just have to buckle down and continue to persevere. But these men, they cannot deal with rejection. They can't deal with failure. They can't deal with loss. And they can't pick themselves up because many of these men don't know how to do these things. And this is what motivates a lot of these males to participate in these types of acts of violence. And this is the problem that many people don't want to pay attention to as related to these kinds of males. And because we won't acknowledge the dysfunction of these males, sadly, throughout history, they go out here and participate in these extreme acts of violence that show how they are historical men in crisis. Now, if you want to learn more about what leads to males like this participating in violent behavior like this, and what motivates them to participate in violent behavior like this, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, in paperback or digital format or audio book on Amazon.com by clicking the link in the description box. And you can also find The Man Crisis at other online booksellers like Draft to Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and you can also find it in paperback at Walmart and Target and other online booksellers. And you can find a wealth of information that can possibly save somebody's life and take a man off the road to being a man in crisis. Now, this was a video requested by a viewer who wanted me to do a detailed story on historical men in crisis. And if you want me to make a video about historical men in crisis, you can send a minimum of $15 to the Cash App or the PayPal by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback. From the author of the critically acclaimed book, The Man Crisis, comes The Woman Crisis. Learn why so many women have become lost in their quest to have it all in The Woman Crisis. Get your copy of The Woman Crisis in paperback at Amazon.com and online booksellers today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.